Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Judy WTF, and tonight is a very relevant topic. It's the kind of topic that if we don't really pin this subject down, then we're going to live in a lot of chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So Yitz, my life coach, is joining us again, and we're going to try to offer you pathways to break through this topic of blaming and shaming as a defense against owning our own stuff. So with that said, a little bit about the Psychological Healing Center. We are located in Sherman Oaks. We also do Skype therapy, phone therapy. Yitz has a wonderful webinar that he conducts every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So for the international audience, you're welcome to join in. It's only $9.95, I think, a very good deal. And also there's the Mind Map video series, which I decided to leave the discount intact because I really do want everybody to avail themselves of the Mind Map system, which I'm going to describe briefly so we can delve into the topic. And this is a call-in show, so please feel free to call in 323-843-2826. So the mind map system is a pathway of identifying childhood wounds, how they embed in us, and how to release the negative core beliefs and toxins that we accumulate as a result of these childhood wounds, and eventually to reset our boundaries and to morph out of a system gone wrong, as I like to think about it. So there are 5 childhood wounds. I want to go over them again so that you understand how these wounds impact shame and blame, and we're just going to kind of start connecting the dots. And thank you, Yitz, again for being on air.
Of course, I enjoy it every time. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. It's always nice to role play with you and have you to bounce ideas off of, and then people can kind of hear how we think and maybe even adopt a way of thinking which is non-blaming, non-shaming, and redirects us to own our own stuff, which specifically means to self-reflect and self-correct, which a lot of people don't know how to do, and they think it means something else, and we'll get into that also. So the mind map, again, is locating childhood wounds, panel 1, and there are 5 wounds of childhood. There is physical abuse, obviously. There is emotional, verbal abuse. There's sexual abuse. There's also abandonment, neglect, and last of all, smothering, spoiling, controlling, that kind of an upbringing. And I base a lot of the work, the team bases a lot of the work on John Bowlby's attachment theory, which states that if we're lucky enough to get the emotional ingredients that we as humans need in the first few years of life, we develop what is healthy, and it's called secure attachment. And the basis of secure attachment is being there for your child, eye contact, skin contact, preferably a stay-at-home mother who breastfeeds, a secondary parent who nurtures the nurturer and can step in to support and help, and really a system, a family system that in an ideal sense is loving, emotionally healthy, and present. So this is the foundationally correct way to form a core sense of self that's really, really strong. Now, if the core sense of self is not really, really strong, then anything can topple it over. So some kind of an indication of blame can then turn the person against themselves and shame themselves or shame others. And then a very bad game of life begins to be played out. And I call that the WTF, or the What the Freud. And the What the Freud then discombobulates into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And the chaos is really a result of an activation or a trigger of a negative core belief or a negative belief about the world. So as many of you know, we talk about narcissistic injuries. And so I want to bring that up in the context of all of this because we get injured. And when we get injured, we don't want to feel any of the injuries. So we want to turn that feeling against another person, let's say. And so if I don't like how I'm feeling, I might want to blame you and shame you and take the focus off of myself, so let you feel bad. Or I might want to blame and shame myself, which is what I know how to do because I've been taught that by my parents, for example. And then instead of growing and expanding and learning, all I'm really doing is turning myself into a victim, locking myself in the same system gone wrong, because now I'm redirecting all the shame and blame that my parents put upon me back onto myself, and now I'm imploding as opposed to exploding. So again, this is a call-in show, folks, so please feel free to call in 323-843-2826. So yes, I want to talk a little bit with you about what you experience with your patients as a life coach at the Psychological Healing Center, and how blame and shame stops growth.
Sure. Well, blame and shame is a way of protecting ourselves. It's a way of avoiding our pains. So what we might do, like you said, we might blame ourselves and shame ourselves to protect mom and dad or to protect whoever's abusing or mistreating, because maybe that's an impossibility or it's too difficult to come to terms with that. Or we may blame other people because we don't want to internalize any type of wounds and triggers that we've gone through.
So stop right there with the blaming ourselves. That's a really good point, because I want to direct it back to, we don't want our parents to be the bad ones. It's that old Alice Miller quote that we as children would rather be the bad ones than have our parents remain as the good figures in our life. And so if we're to blame, if we're bad, that keeps them good.
Yeah, we keep that idealized parent in our head and feel safe and feel connected to that family unit. It's very, very destructive, and it's just not the cause. We don't identify the truth by doing that.
Right, but you can see how important it is for a child to keep that parent intact, and so it would rather be their fault that anything. I mean, even as horrific as child abuse. Well, mommy said that my skirt was too short and that's what happened. Or daddy said that I shouldn't have flirted with that guy and so on. So it gets really, really very distorted really quickly, and the child keeps holding the position that they are to blame and they are to shame, and so nothing really gets resolved. It's a real state of stuckenness, if you will. Now the opposite is also a state of stuckenness, because if I'm blaming you or shaming you and I'm basically vomiting my feelings on you, I also don't get to look in the truth mirror. And I think we have a call-in. So hello, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy and Yitz. And who's calling, please?
Oh, hi, my name is Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Thank you very much. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from the west coast of Canada, Vancouver.
Okay. Did we speak today?
No.
Nope. Okay, that I'm really glad you're calling in, and meet Yitz, my life coach. And
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for calling.
And so,
Hi. I'm just going to turn off the video here because I can't believe I'm on with you.
Yeah, go ahead and ask away, please. Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I've listened. Yeah, I've listened to lots of your shows and gotten so much help from the information about narcissistic parenting.
Thank you. Okay.
So I'm 54, and I had no contact for about 10 years with my mom.
Okay.
Just to try to regain my life and
Okay.
understand what was happening and what the problems were. And I'm back in touch with her now for a few years.
Okay.
And I feel like I've got a fairly good understanding of the nature of her narcissism, and I don't want no contact anymore because she's getting older, and I have some tools for, how to be in touch with her. And
Okay.
the thing that I'm really struggling with is I was the golden child in my family, and my sister was the scapegoat, and it breaks my heart because I just feel so bad for her, and I don't know how to be helpful in this family dynamic. I don't enjoy being the golden child. I don't want it, and I hate seeing how much pain it causes her.
Well,
And I don't know what to
contrary.
do to be helpful.
Okay, so contrary to popular belief, being the golden child is not so golden. Correct, Lisa?
No, it's not.
Not so golden, and it carries with it a lot of blame and shame on you for taking the stardom and throwing your little sister in secondary position. And so one thing that I want to recommend to you is that you watch the episodes on Sibling Rivalry, because Sibling Rivalry, where the parent favors one child over the other, is the setup for the system gone wrong. And so who is the cause of the system gone wrong? And again, I don't want to emphasize fault here because this is a multi-generational issue and a multi-generational copycat of systems gone wrong. I call it the psycho-viral multi-generational systems gone wrong, with the emphasis on psycho because we're driven crazy by it. And so one thing to know is that it's not your sister's fault. It's not your fault. And at the same time, your parents are the cause. And it's not necessarily their fault, only in that they didn't clean themselves up before they had children. So yes, it is a parent's responsibility to clean up before having children so that they can offer the best possible parenting that they can transmute to the next generation. So with that said, I'm imagining that you're blaming and shaming yourself for how your sister must feel in this system. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel terrible
Okay.
for the effect it has.
Okay, so what does blame and shame serve? What function does it serve? Well, it serves as a way to stay victim and avoid the truth. So I'm going to offer you a very clean way of seeing things. So you can look in the mirror and say, I'm a horrible person. I stole the light from my sister. Or you could say, wow, my parents sure didn't know how to manage the family, and they sure were uneven-handed. And look what happened. Look at the domino effects of what went down. And then in terms of repair with your sister, are you still talking to her or not so much?
Oh, yeah, we have a good relationship.
Okay. So first of all, I really recommend that you watch the series on Sibling Rivalry, psychoeducate her. Even, you can have a free PDF copy of my book. That's available.
Okay.
You can download that easily. And if you don't know how, just get in contact with us and we'll send you a copy. And I would pay it forward and then send it to her. And for everyone listening, please send it to everyone. It's free, a free PDF copy. So if you're a teacher, send it to all the parents and the students. If you're a principal, well, send it to your staff. If you're a political leader, then send it to all the people in your country, okay? Because this is a way of really correcting our psycho-perceptual way of seeing ourselves and the world. So what happens when we step out of the blame-shame model? Because blame-shame model is a paradigm, isn't it? It's a paradigm that we're stuck in. And so if we step out of the blame shame model, we could start having a new model that will create panel 7, 8, 9, which is interconnection, reconnection, and healing. Paradigm shift, and then recoding, and ultimately unity, healing. So when I want to start from the beginning, and Yitz, you're very familiar with working with people, and you've done an excellent job, by the way. So many
Thank
people
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And your
Appreciate
webinar series, yeah. And so consciousness is causal. That's one of the first things I say in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. Consciousness is causal. Consciousness is the same as intent. If you intend to blame someone, if you intend to shame someone, whether it be someone else or yourself, then I guarantee you that you will. The mind map is predictive. I think my next career will be psychic. I'm going to use the mind map to psychically predict things. You will automatically go to, this is kind of like snakes and ladders. You'll automatically start devolving into panel number 4. See the chaos? 5, defenses, and 6, more breakdowns. Why? Because blaming yourself is based on a lie. It's based on a lie that it's your fault that your sister got to be number 2. So, truth or lie, did your sister become number 2 because you created that to be so?
No, not at all.
Okay, so you
It's a
see,
lie.
correct. So you see, logically, we have to understand that logic and psychologic are two different things. There's the logic where you're very rational. You can see that you're not the cause of delegating your sister to the secondary position, and yet your sister is now at the effect of that, and you're also at the effect of a family system gone wrong. So by backing out of the blame shame system, what's going to happen? There is going to be a paradigm shift, and that paradigm shift is going to now put people in a new way of thinking, and the new way of thinking is called
Reflection, self-correction.
Self-reflect, self-correct. Not only self-reflect on us, but self-reflect on the system gone wrong. So now, Lisa, you can stand back and say, wow, this has absolutely nothing to do with me. And unfortunately, my parents were not even-handed. Maybe they lived this unbalanced way of golden childing one and scapegoating another and so on. And this is carried forth to the next generation. Now you can pull out of it. And with your sister at this particular time, now you have an opportunity to reboot the system and have what I brought it with me, the peaceful healing dialogue. Okay, it's up on my website. You can pull it off of there. It's also in the PDF of the book, and it's a way of communicating. So I'm gonna role model it to everybody. Okay, Yitz, you're gonna be my sister. Is that okay?
Doing my best.
Okay, you're gonna have to do something about the beard, but
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly shave real quick.
okay, please do. Okay, so what's your sister's name?
Can we call her Louise?
Louise, can I talk to you about some things that I've been learning, some things that I've had on my mind? Is that okay with you, Louise?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I have noticed that, unfortunately, there's been a lot of strain in the family, and it's affected us. And by the way, I know this is not exact replica of your family, but you get the drift of this, right, Lisa? Yes?
Yeah.
So quickly, I'm playing
Okay,
the.
you're Louise.
Okay.
Okay, so Louise, I've been studying psychology, mind map psychology, and I noticed that there's been a lot of unfortunate tension between us, and I'm kind of putting it together now. It's really interesting, and By the way, I really would love you to do some learning with me, because my intention with you is to have a really great next chapter of our life. I would really, really enjoy it.
Okay, so very quickly, I'm blaming and shaming, correct? I'm pushing back, or you want me to?
No. I'm
saying
having
now-
a
now
peaceful
we'll do the
healing
peaceful healing. Okay.
dialogue with
This is
my
how it should be.
sister.
Got
This
it,
is how
got
it
it.
should be.
Okay.
And then what would you say?
I would say thank you for being so open with me. Let's talk.
Yeah, no, thank you. And by the way, I'm going to suggest some stuff so that you and I could be on the same page with learning a new system. So here's what I've learned, Louise, okay? I've learned that mom and dad, for whatever reasons, they uneven-handedly pit us against each other. Do you notice that happened?
I do. Thank you for being so open about this. I realize
Yeah.
that we have been at odds, but it's not your fault or mine, and we can work this out.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying, is it's not your fault or mine.
Yeah.
And so the history has had it so that I've been treated as special, and you've been treated quite the opposite. And I'm imagining that you must have some really angry and hurtful feelings against me about it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, you get all the good things, and I constantly
It's true.
am made to feel like I'm worthless. I can't get any approval or love or
Exactly.
acceptance. And I'm very envious of the fact that you get that.
Yeah, and I'm really, really sad that I participated in that system. I really didn't quite understand what was going on. I honestly thought that you were bad and I was good, and that's what mom and dad taught me. And so I guess I had kind of a little lot of a brainwash there. And now that I'm opening my eyes, I can see that we've been pitted against each other, and I'm devastated.
Yeah, you did terrible things to me, and
I did.
I did some things to you that I regret as well.
Yeah.
And I think we should work towards identifying the cause, which is not you or I, and
Okay.
and connect as people, and not as.
And so I no longer want to blame myself for this, nor do I want to blame you for acting out on me, as it's obvious that you were hurt. And I want to really begin to own the truth of this.
So here's an idea. How about every time we get into a quarrel and we start getting at it with each other, how about we discuss what's going on, allow ourselves to calm down and realize what's really truly happening here, so we can make sure we don't stray in the relationship any further.
I really appreciate that. Now I feel finally, for the first time, that I have a true sister participating in a relationship that has a chance of evolving. So thank you, and I'm just going to keep telling the truth, and I'm going to stop blaming myself for taking that spotlight, and I'm going to understand that we were both set up in a really bad system. So let's clean that up.
Yeah, let's
we
work
have an
towards
opportunity.
forgiveness of each other and ourselves.
Absolutely.
And let's create a dialogue where we can communicate openly and honestly.
Thank you. Appreciate that much.
Of course.
Okay, so Lisa, tell me if any of that is relatable to you and your sister, and go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing that. I expect there's lots of families where that's like you hit the nail on the head in terms of the dynamics. For us, we've never had an issue with me treating her poorly or participating in scapegoating her.
Okay.
Luckily, so I know that could be common and happen. I think our challenge right now more is that our mom continues in the pattern, and we both are aware of it and trying to stay out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
It's like my mom doesn't change the way she looks at us,
And she probably won't.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Having to cope with that. Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so did you say that recently you decided to go light contact with your mother after going no contact with her?
I'd been out of touch for almost a decade, and
Wow.
a few years ago, I've been back in contact. Yeah.
Okay. And what made you decide to be back in touch with her? How did that happen?
It was getting really painful to be out of touch for us and for the whole family.
Yeah.
And I felt like I got enough space and healing and insight that I was going to get from that. And the next step for my own healing and growth was to re-establish contact and then figure out how to navigate that and have good boundaries. And that's work that's been good.
Okay, so one of the ways to avoid being activated in the blame-shame department by our parents, particularly if they're blamers and shamers and narcissistically injured themselves and defending in that manner, is to identify that wound in childhood, how you reacted to it, and how you encoded it into the fiber of your being. So if you encoded your parents' message in such a way, for example, maybe your sister encoded that she's not worthy, maybe you encoded that you're entitled, I don't know what you encoded there, but to start dismantling that core belief, because once you dismantle it, your mother can press on the lever all she wants, and it's not going to detonate the same way into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So you must have been doing some good work on yourself, because you dared to go back in the system, and this time maybe you're better equipped not to be activated in your panel 3 negative core beliefs. So then, and so she just won't have that same effect on you. Does that make sense?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts or questions that you want to ask Yitz or myself about your sister and healing the disconnect between her and yourself?
No, I think that's really helpful. I like what you started out just saying, straight up recognizing the way I still take on blame and shame.
Okay.
And that when I can step out of that, then this new paradigm comes, and that's really helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, definitely pull that peaceful healing dialogue off the website and get that free PDF of the book. And remember, if ever you want to have a very clean system of psychoeducating yourself, you can always get the Mind Map video series, which will break it down into, you can watch it with your sister. Sister, let's watch this together, and share the cost with her. It's $195 between the two of you. It's obviously half that if she pays half or whatever you want to do with that. And then watch it together, and you can see, wow, this is how I was wounded. Oh, this is how you were wounded. This is what you encoded. This is what I encoded. This is why we fell into chaos. This is why we broke down. This is why we haven't been getting along. And it'll really cleanly give you a bird's eye picture of what happened, what the Freud happened, and how to heal it. So I think that might be a really great idea for the two of you to do together.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for calling in from my favorite country where I grew up, Canada. Right?
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
You're welcome. And if ever you need to have some therapeutic intervention to help heal the disconnect, please reach out to me and the team.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk with you and Yitz about why blame and shame is the only game when you're high on the narcissistic scale of things. Okay. So can you imagine someone who's been so blamed and shamed and verbally abused, for example, that they've erected defense mechanisms that are thicker than the walls of China. I don't know, walls of China?
Yeah, Great Wall of China.
I think they came down, so there's hope.
There's hope.
That came down. And,
is that right? Oh.
Yeah, there are walls going up, there are walls going down. Jeez. Yeah. Okay, so the core injury of the narcissistic injury is it's so penetrating that the reactions are so severe. People get activated in their amygdala, and they go into fight flight so quickly that they can't really catch their breath, and all they know how to do is deflect, 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 deflect. So they don't have that pause where they could say, okay, so if I own my own stuff, maybe I can shift this, because they've lost trust in the world, right? From a developmental point of view, the first mission in life is, as Ericksonian model, I think it's Erickson, trust versus mistrust. And so with the narcissistic injury, the child in some way, shape, or form loses trust in him or herself. And so there's no sense of, if I own my own stuff, hey, if you're the narcissist and I own my own stuff, all I think will happen is that you're going to use my own stuff against me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Yep.
There's no model for healing there.
No.
So checkmate. I own my own stuff, and now I'm in worse shape than ever, because now you're going to say, I told you so.
Set you up.
Set me up. So there's no, see, it's owning up to things, or self-reflecting and self-correcting, particularly in a relationship, presumes that the other person wants to do the same. Sure. Or is open, or has some level of a semi-permeable membrane in order to let in a little bit of light and a little bit of trust to think that, gee, maybe you do want to repair with me. But that's not the case with high levels of the narcissistic system gone wrong. No, in their mind. No, you don't want to repair with me.
No,
you're just going to wait till I get vulnerable, and then you're just going to stab me. Okay?
Betray me.
Exactly.
100%. Yeah, that's the
exactly.
That's the defenses, and it's really a massive disconnect, because any form of self-correction, self-reflection, self-correction really is a way of saying, okay, what is your part in it? What's my part in it?
Mm-hmm.
And let's figure out who's not to blame or shame, just because we want to connect and these things are getting in the way of our connection.
And solve the problem.
Right.
It's very clean.
It's very clean, and it's not easy, because sometimes we got to own up. Oh, maybe I screwed up and made a mistake. But in other words, we're avoiding connection.
So it presumes some sort of a good faith on the part of the person that you're talking to. But in the world of narcissistic injury, there is no good faith. There is only a winner and a loser. There is who's on top, who's on bottom, who's controlling, who's being controlled, who's the victim, who's the victor. So it's a very black and white kind of system. And so how do you move somebody off that pendulum and get them into a new system of seeing and being? Sometimes it takes a lot more than 10 sessions, which is the mind map system. And sometimes it takes a deeper and more frequent buildup of trust.
It does.
And love and time, so that person can form some sort of a consistent, because we talked about that the other day, that part of the cracked lens of perception, where people are exaggerated, either their emotions run really high, and the membranes of the psychological system are too permeable in the case of the borderline personality disorder, or too hardened in the case of the narcissist. Sometimes it takes a lot more time for that therapeutic connection to take root.
It does, and also in addition to that, it's sometimes defenses, we don't realize that they're bad for us or disconnecting until we see the effects of the disconnect. So there's the reality coming crashing down and realizing, okay, well, now that we've ended up in chaos, we could either go into defenses and breakdowns, and hopefully before that we can get to panel 7 where we identify, okay, this is chaos, what is going on here? But when we are we're too busy defending ourselves, and when we're too invested in the defenses, then we're not going to see the benefits, or the threshold of pain is not guess, high enough to realize this is not working. So sometimes it does take a wake up to realize, okay, well, listen, what are my defenses? What am I doing? Because ultimately, I'm not owning my own stuff. I'm not taking responsibility.
And also to add to that, sometimes the reason this doesn't move anywhere, move into the panel 7 range, is because first of all, there's a presumption that I can never and will never trust the world. Remember, parents set the bar, okay? And so that time and experience in the therapeutic corrective emotional experience has to somehow overcome the disconnect of the family, because there's never been repair. So in the therapeutic relationship, there's going to be a disconnect and a repair, and a disconnect and a repair, and a disconnect and a repair. And over time, the person gets the message that repair is possible. Because just because you disconnect from a person, it doesn't mean forever goodbye.
Yep.
That's not a model of mental
rejection per se. It's sometimes you just need to disconnect so that you can heal yourself
and
then
reconnect.
you can reconnect, exactly.
Right.
So when we're too fused and connected to our old way of life, our family of origin, or the dysfunction, then we don't really, then I guess it kind of works. But the second when we want a better life for ourselves, we want to heal, we have to disconnect and realize, okay, well, what am I?
Regroup, disconnect, regroup.
Disconnect and individuate, and then you can heal yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to show the audience once again what this process does. So if I blame and shame myself, right? And then you come along and you trip up my negative core belief of worthlessness, right? So I'm now going to hate you for it.
Yeah.
Won't I?
And I don't even have to necessarily blame you. I can say something that might imply, and that message might be received as if I am blaming, and it trips up the whole system.
That's right.
And
So
I'm the cause.
You can do very little. You could just look at me
glance
wrong.
at you, exactly.
You can just say a few words, and then that'll trip me up. So now, if you say something that will dovetail with my negative core belief, I'll get tripped up. I'll go down the rabbit hole of self-blame and shame and the chaos and the implosions, and now I'll hate you for tripping me up.
Correct, and I am the cause, seemingly, of that chaos.
Right,
And
you're the trigger.
I'm the trigger, right?
The trigger,
and therefore
right.
I get the backlash of doing what I did, which was whatever implied that I was blaming or shaming you, and pushed you down that dark place.
Right, and so that system, again, is going to devolve into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns.
Correct.
Now, on the other hand, if you say something and I want to be, rather than take the paradigm of blame and shame, maybe I want to now shift to the consciousness of clarification. And so I might want to clarify with myself my unconscious beliefs. I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I'm hateful, so on and so forth, and check in with that, and then check in to see if really that's what you were saying, or if really that's what was triggered in me.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's when you identify that what the real cause is, be the cause. Obviously, your whole system is designed to do that. Is
Right.
When you identify the real cause, then you realize that this person is simply almost a messenger to remind you, hey, there's some unhealed aspects that you need to work on.
That's right. Okay, now the opposite could be like this. So if I'm blaming and shaming you, right, and then that dovetails with your core belief, you're going to get tripped up.
Yeah.
Correct?
And you might be shaming and blaming me, and it might actually be that case.
Right.
But if I already feel shamed and blamed, then it catapults it into much more of an intense experience, and then there's just no connection, because how do I resolve that? You would have to then realize maybe you're shaming and blaming. I would realize that I've been triggered, and then work through that.
So
but it's work.
If I am intentionally shaming and blaming you and it doesn't feel good, and you're in the model of defending against the shame and the blame as opposed to a more healthy consciousness. The more healthy consciousness might be something like seeing that I'm doing something dysfunctional and identifying that and not buying into it, and perhaps having less to do with me if I'm going to continue to treat you like that.
Yeah, and that,
right?
Yeah, that 100%, and that as well as, when we have wounds, when we have guilt and shame, and we've been hurt, betrayed, and then by us working through our own stuff, owning our own stuff, we then remove the inner triggers, so that if somebody does come along and betray or shame, blame, then we can identify, well, I've worked through my stuff. And maybe there's some more triggers left, but I can ultimately identify, is it something that you need to work on, or is it something I need to? And then we can get cognitive about it and understand what the cause is.
That's right. It doesn't lend for panel number 7, which is synergistically discover, check in with each other, have the intention of revealing truth. That would be panel 7. The other is really avoiding the growth. Blame, shame never resolves.
No.
It degenerates.
Yeah, it soothes maybe in the moment, because it's like, oh, I don't have to deal with this anymore. This person's dealing with it. They can fix the relationship, and ultimately, the relationship is a relationship between two people who want to connect.
Right.
So if I'm constantly blaming it all on the other person, and they're fixing the relationship, it's really not really a relationship. It's more just a dumpster of your negative feelings.
It's not. And owning your stuff, which I've been talking more and more about, especially with parents. And the more we as parents or as humans can own our own stuff, the more we can role model to our children and to other people that there's nothing wrong with owning our own stuff. Just because we own our own stuff, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we're now going to be vulnerable to attack from another person. But it may mean that, in which case you may not want to engage with that person. It's kind of like if you expose your vulnerability to somebody, and I say to you, Yitz, in thinking about it, I think that I reacted too quickly to something, and I just want you to understand that's on me. That was my trigger. Now, if you jump in there and say, "Yeah,
Here's
I
an
knew
excellent
it,"
opportunity. Let me jump in on it.
I'm just going to jump on her.
That's it.
And
Finally, I can
stab
just-
her. Right?
100%.
Then there goes the trust.
There goes the trust.
There goes the trust.
Yeah. So then the other person learns, I cannot do that, and then you got defensive. You got stonewalling. There's no connection.
Absolutely. So this is really a paradigm shift out of that system of blame and shame, and a shift into owning my own stuff, clarifying truth, looking at the system gone wrong, identifying cause, identifying core negative belief systems, and being responsible for dismantling them so that we don't become a breeding ground, so to speak, for setup for being trigger happy. And this is a call-in show, everybody. I think we have time for another caller, so please do call in, 323-843-2826. And I just want to read a little bit about shame and the pendulum of blame. When Things Go Wrong, Who is to Blame? By Marcy Lamia, PhD. The following guest post was written by my colleague, Mark Zaslov, PhD. Okay, so obviously, when we're being shamed and blamed by self or other, we're feeling judged. And the blame is then associated with defenses against the shame. And these core beliefs are then going to trigger fundamentally bad, unworthy feelings, and self-esteem is going to be affected. So when feeling shame, we instinctively turn away or hide from other people. And this would be the time to check in. Instead of hiding and going into panel number 5 and cocooning oneself and shutting down, this might be the time to take a risk and start exploring, well, what exactly did you mean? I'm a little confused. Or start exploring your own injuries of childhood and what incentivized you to turn against yourself. So I think if you start looking at it as the system that we can flip over 180 degrees, we can go from victim to cause, from being at the effect of to being at the cause.
To giving your power away, to taking it back, and being
That's
the
right.
absolute controller and feeling good about yourself, because you're not just a victim, you're actually somebody who takes pride in who they are.
Absolutely. And what is maturity? Maturity is owning your own stuff. It's
Absolutely.
self-reflecting and self-correcting.
Yeah, it's not easy at times, but it's maturity, and it's how we grow.
It's how we grow. So I want to just take a moment to talk about the principles of the peaceful healing dialogue, which parallel self-reflection and self-correction. It's about being respectful to the other person. It's about telling the truth. It's about self-reflecting, feedback. And I think we have a call in. So let's take one more call here. And hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy and Yitz Epstein. And what is your name, please?
Hi, Dr. Judy. It is Alexandria calling back.
Hi, how are you? How you doing? You wrote me the most beautiful letter. I hope I responded. I know that some weeks I go crazy, but you sent me some really gorgeous links, and I did watch one of those interviews. So how are you? And ask away with your question.
Oh, I'm doing like better with the healing process, and I'm going through with Dr. Tracy, and I'm glad you liked the links. I went I got really overzealous with all the
That's
info,
okay.
but
it's okay.
just because I'm excited, and so I'm glad you took some interest in them. But I'm calling tonight because when I was just listening, and you mentioned that, like, when someone is being blamed or shamed, and then that person goes into isolation and things like that, and that's really what I'm going through now and trying to break through out of. And like specifically, one of my forms of isolation is, I feel like it's healthy, but it's also not so healthy, and I wanted you and Yitz's take on it. And by the way, I've still been meaning to sign up for your class. Yitz.
Yeah, it's a real support system. And speaking of enlightened witnesses, people who've been through narcissistic abuse, actually able to stand with each other and validate the reality of what's going on is very powerful. So yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. Okay, so I have chosen to connect in a different way that a lot of people nowadays, and also I feel like in my generation, the quote-unquote millennial generation, are connecting. I've chosen to stop texting, but to do two other options: email and Google Duo, which is kind of like you can send video messages, kind of like Snapchat.
Okay.
And anyways, I grew up very alone. My experience was very alone, isolated, and neglected, in that sense. And anyways, I would always get letters or talks on the phone. And as you can imagine, a child developing, we need touch. Human beings need, as you've gone on to explain.
Yes.
And so my question is, well, anyways, I guess like the Psych 101 example with the monkey, the wire monkey, and the cloth monkey.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so I deeply feel that video messaging is like the cloth monkey.
Well,
for human
compared,
beings. Like eye contact, this and that.
Right,
but
compared
with, like,
to
texting and letters, Yeah, with texting and letters, like my family would reach out to me and I just couldn't, it was uncomfortable to me because for a child developing, a human being, period, an animal, that is not comfort. And so this is what I've chosen. And so I wanted to grab your opinion.
Well, okay,
What
first
you
of
think
all,
about that.
I think a couple of things. It's one step up, right, from texting. At least you've got the video in the chat. And how sad that we don't have more of the actual skin to skin, eye contact, human to human. It is a better system. And going back to our topic of blaming and shaming, I just wanted to know if you have a question about that. But I like that you're evolving into more. More connection is always better than less connection. So that's what I think about that. And so, do you have any questions?
Thanks.
Yeah. Do you have any questions about
blaming and shaming?
Yes.
I guess the question to that is, well, how do you come out of isolation, like when you're, because I feel like my mom was a scapegoat and that I am too, and so I'm in this my little safe space of a shell, so I'm just like, I guess, what tips do you have?
Okay, so first of all, why are you isolating? Because you were the scapegoat. So in that system, it's appropriate to isolate because who would want to be criticized or shamed by somebody like a parent? So remember, parents set the bar. So your old system is now setting the bar, and the paradigm shift for you would be realizing that not everyone is like your mother or your father, and so now you have to go back and kind of park yourself in neutral and use your semi-permeable membrane to vet people and to help distinguish between those who you need to isolate from, and then you can just legitimately, instead of isolating from them, just have really nothing to do with them, but you don't have to isolate your whole being just because there are a few people or even many people who don't treat you properly. So that way you're not generalizing into this ism, this isolation ism, and there's room for people, to come through. Because that's the stuckedness of the defense mechanisms. That's what I mean by the psychological jail.
Gotcha.
Like congratulations, you kept away from the pain, but now look at you, you're in the darkness and you're locked in. So mental health is not thinking in extremes and not generalizing and not projecting on the world that everyone is going to reject you. Because if you're looking for that, it's that same role play I did with you, Yitz, where if I'm feeling that I'm worthless, well, Yitz, why are you looking at me like that? What did he do? He just looked at me, right? And now I'm tripping out on, he must think that I'm worthless. Oh, he must think that I'm unfriendly. Oh, he must think. And that's projection. Okay, so the answer to the question is to stop projecting your family rules and views on the rest of the world. Do you think you can keep that in mind, please?
I absolutely will keep that in mind. Thank you so much. And then I know you guys are short in time, so I just want to say real quick that I do find it difficult to connect on that level because most people want to downgrade to texting, which is such a minimal effort, and so it's I gave people my info for this video messaging. People are still, used to, of course, what's comfortable. So, but I'm definitely going to keep that in mind.
More connection is better than.
Gotta go over and put the effort into doing it because it's not easy.
Okay. All right. More connection is better than less connection, and not projecting onto the world and upon ourselves that which our parents set us up to see. Is we've got to bust the lie, and we've got to give the world a chance to somehow show us that that's not the only paradigm that exists. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
You're very welcome. Thanks for calling in.
Have a good night.
You do the same. Okay, so I know we're kind of running out of time, And just to remind people that we have a beautiful team of mind map coaches and psychologists and therapists that are very trained in helping you from the wounds of childhood and healing them, dismantling these negative core beliefs and cracked lens of perceptions, and helping you to own your own stuff so that you can paradigm shift out of this whole mess. And of course, Yitz is one of those people. And for those of you who are Mind Map graduates, you are welcome to join me. I changed it to the first Tuesday of every month from 7 to 8:30 in Sherman Oaks. And in order to be part of that group, you have to have completed the Mind Map process. So with that said, we're going to go to Shrink That Tune. Thanks, Yitz, for finding this. Okay. And this is called Blame the World by Daly. So I'll read a paragraph and then you can throw in your shrinking of it. Okay. Okay.
Don't shame or blame me.
No,
if it doesn't go as planned.
I don't know. Audience, don't do it. Okay. If somebody told me the truth would have hurt me, I wouldn't place the blame because nobody's perfect. But if you played a cold game and it left you lonely, now you've only yourself to blame for the fact that you've blown it.
So if it sounds like if he's saying that if this relationship is being open and honest, I'm more than happy to take responsibility. But there's lack of empathy. The cold game is lack of empathy.
That's the worst game to play,
the worst
right?
because
It's the abandonment.
Exactly. You're not getting proper feedback.
Okay, so the truth is the own your own stuff part of it, right?
Yeah.
And the defense mechanisms are the defense of all that, which gets us nowhere. So guess the game is up now, and I was a fool to love you. The consequences, look now, all this hate for one another. So this is the last time I try to make it work. You should think of it as a lesson learned.
Yeah, it sounds like the songwriter, the individual is struggling to. I mean, it's realizing what's going on. It's like, well, that's it. This is what it is.
And it sounds like no one's really been communicating here. No peaceful healing dialogue.
No.
It's just a bad game of on. And then at the end, there's a breakdown, but there's no exploring what happened, why we're feeling this way. Can truth be revealed through the process of our relationship? Hey, betrayed your one and only. The tears fell. Now,
And
right.
ultimately, you might be right in your head, but you're not happy. You're connected, and ultimately, it's about human connection, not
That's
about
right.
being right. So.
That's right. And there's no evolution. It's
No.
just a devolving system.
Correct.
So thank you for participating and
My
Shrink
pleasure.
That Tune.
Thank you.
And please feel free to reach out to the Psychological Healing Center and suggest topics. And we're going to have plenty of interesting topics this year. And of course, you know that you can buy the Mind Map video series, download a free copy of the PDF, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, participate in webinar, participate in healing through our wonderful staff. And also know that if you're a graduate, you can join me in Sherman Oaks for my Mind Map Graduates group. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And remember, the key is own your own stuff through self-reflection and self-correction. Good night, everyone.